am an old-time environment journalist, having spent nearly 4 decades in this line of work. I'm an old-time storyteller, both in environment journalism, environment communication. Currently, I have a job that pays me to pursue my passion. I work with Mongabay India as the editorial director. As it comes to Nilgiris, I'm a floating invasive. I'm not even a rooted invasive. I come and go. So I'm a floating invasive. As some of you would have already noticed in the exhibition schedule, that I've been writing stories on the Nilgiris since 1993. So that means, more than 30 years now, on and off, coming and doing stories. I've had an extremely good fortune to do part of my schooling in this beautiful district. Some of us keep returning. Some of us have grown roots here. And some of us are more Toda than the Todas. So, okay, I have a reasonably historical perspective of Nilgiris. When I was a college student in 1986, that's the first time I heard about the Save Nilgiris, not Save Nilgiris, Save Western Ghats March. It passed through Thrissur and, 1993, when I visited the Nilgiris as a journalist for the first time, Mr. Krishnan. So it's not just Pratim alone. There are a whole lot of people who got their initial bearings into the Nilgiris with BJ. So with Mr. Krishnan, and introduced to most of the issues of Nilgiris. And you can see those clippings there. And in more recent years, I have done field assignments in the other parts of the biosphere. So Wayanad, Kodagu, and my colleague Aarti. Aarti, where are you? Lift your hand. Yeah. She has also done a lot of work in the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. We journalists are generalists. We try to look at any issue in its entirety, even if we are doing a story on a very specific topic. For us, science is important, but also important is its linkage to society, economy, and the political realities. Finding the linkages in a situation is a key to our work. For us, anecdotal is as important as the peer-reviewed. We get our stories from anecdotal evidence. People talk with us. In the Madri Nadandircha, then we follow up, we do peer review, we'll check with peer review. And despite all the mocking that society has for the media as an institution, there is still a basal rock, Charnokite, Pranay? Charnokite, of journalists who take our job seriously. We go into every story, every field assignment with the curiosity of a student and unencumbered with prejudices and willing to learn from the facts that we find and understand. This session, of course, is not about media, but about communication that can lead to action for conservation and development of the NBR. And each one of you, your actionable ideas, please, actionable ideas, because that's where we have come to. We have looked at the issues thoroughly. Actionable ideas is important. For instance, this very unfortunate is not there. Sanjay talked about the mosaic of legislations, that the NBR deals with. This could perhaps be just throwing a suggestion here. This could perhaps be a starting point for developing some kind of a citizen action plan or citizen charter, to work forward. We always think that citizen charters, citizen action plans don't have impact. But I know from my reporting experience, many of the legislations that we talk about today, that's the Biodiversity Act 2002 and Plant Varieties Protection Act 2001, they all started with citizens group, meeting and, sort of kickstarting the process. BJ, so you remember the Dharwad meeting to draft the Biodiversity Act those days. So I mean, this is something that we can think of. I mean, it's a small but very committed group here. So I mean, we can start that process. Over the last 3 days, we heard multiple issues and problems and uh, technical sides, technical arguments, findings, hope, despair, all that. Let's focus on the way forward in this session. This is the concluding session, so it will be different in its format. We will have quick one question intervention. No PowerPoints, huh? No PowerPoints. Yeah, there are showers here. I have the switch. So if anybody makes a PowerPoint, if you see me going for, yeah, you know what it is. Yeah, we should have used that for Tarun yesterday. Yeah. Okay. So this is the concluding session. We'll have quick one question intervention by each of three panelists. This will serve as guideposts, and we have had this discussion and understanding. What we say is just guideposts. I mean, the answer is going to come from all of you. It's just guideposts, and then we'll have discussions. Please raise your hand, and the roving mic will reach you, and be according to your token number. So it will reach you according to, and if you want to speak in Tamil, Malayalam, or Kannada, sorry, we can find enough volunteers in this room to translate your. So I would like, in the ഭാഷാനാലും പേസുങ്ക കേൾവി കേളുങ്ക and മലയാളത്തിൽ വേണ്ട സംസാരിക്കൂ, anything. We just want all the conversation to be here. Let us be aware that almost all of us feel passionately about a home district, whether it is the Nilgiris, Kodagu, Wayanad. But let us engage calmly and put across ideas on how we can together develop a communication action plan, which in turn can lead to our ultimate goal to conserve and develop the NBR simultaneously. I'm not going to introduce each one of the panelists in detail, so because they're there, everybody's there. I won't spend time that. But what I would do is sort of give the framework and ask all the questions now, so that I can sit down after that. So those of you who were here on the first day, how many were here on the first day? Yes, and you know Pranay. You heard him. I mean, there are two Pranays, so I'm going to use Pranay L and Pranay K. So you can use the short form K or L if you want, but then, So Pranay Lal, and he has the ability to convert technical stuff. I mean, all that we saw was hardcore technical stuff into, into very communicable, um, great communication. So Pranay, I know it's not easy. I've spent my entire life trying to do it. Still continue to, even at this age, I'm trying to do it. But then it's not easy. People think it's easy, but it's not. Writing or communicating easy is far more difficult than what you think it is. So I'd like you to tell us how we can convert all the technical stuff we heard during the last 3 years into actionable communication for the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. I also want you to add the possible curveballs that climate change can throw for Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. Avijit Michael is an expert on converting individual voice into a collective digital voice. So, how many of you have heard of Jhatka.org, change.org? Yeah. So Avijit was the founder, head of for Jhatka, but not for Change. And currently he has a startup called demtech.ai. That is, I think it stands for Democracy, Technology, and Artificial Intelligence. Avijit, you have had multiple diverse voices during the past 3 years. how would you digitally collectivize individual voices and raise the voice for the NPR with strength but without sensationalism? Because we heard so much about what sensationalism. You said about the sensational uh, storylines that come, sensational headlines that come. We have examples in Mongo Bay, India, of the wolf story. Um, I would like you to sort of answer that question. Pranay Karuna, he works with Dasra. He's involved with Dasra's Climate Alliance Network Initiative, which is a network of organizations working to develop a narrative on climate change. So, you can tell us, how can the voice of the NBR be blended into the larger national, I dare say global, networks, and also how can it be developed into fundable projects? So over to you, Pranay.
So I think I've been, uh, you know, boxed into a corner. It's kind of difficult because um, I'm a little. I don't know where to begin the story because this is a tall task, right? I mean, we want to communicate idea forcefully to protect this wonderful landscape. And I don't want to call it a biosphere reserve or anything because I think I find it quite restrictive. I mean, these terms, because they tend to exclude people, cultures, all of those things. I think let's say landscape because I think everything comes into it. Um, I don't know where to begin because there is a bit of a challenge. There are multiple challenges that this wonderful but fragile landscape that needs urgent redressal. Um, my my worry is that, like Sanjay Upadhyay said, there are multiple legislations without the bedrock of a policy, and without a policy, there is no executive, there's no leadership to take it forward. Uh, Gopi just spoke about biodiversity. How did the Biodiversity Act come into existence? For 15 years, there were biodiversity registers that were being developed by local communities. Now, if you go back to those registers, many of those species about which they talk are not even listed in the working plans. Forget working plans, they're not even accounted for in very many papers. I just saw Divya and Sridhar leave, but they would vouch for this. That during the course of your rewilding, any such work, you come across species that have not been encountered. Right? I mean, they're very vital. I think those things are critical. So there's got to be a bidirectional process of getting traditional knowledge to come with the resources that we have. And I'm not going to say scientific knowledge, that it has to be given a linear name to get uh, sanctity of protection. I don't think that that is needed. The For millennia, the the indigenous communities have been protecting this. Who are we to say that it now needs a scientific name and only then shall it be protected? No, I don't think that's the way forward. But nevertheless, it needs to be documented and presented, and its status be known. And it is the ground up approach that we need. Only then will all communities come together. I think that is sorely missing. I find that there's so much. The last two sessions were real eye openers for me, and I don't think I see that, at least not in the literature that I've seen so far. That really inspires me to say that this exists. I've seen something similar in Sikkim, for example. I've seen something similar in Darjeeling area, where biodiversity registers and all these PRAs and RRAs, what were being talked about a little earlier, have all come together to inform policy making. I was discussing yesterday with somebody that there are only two places in India where you have a municipal level plastic tax for tourists who come in. So it's 1,000 rupees flat that you come in for a week. You have to pay 1,000 rupees, and it's non-refundable for all the plastic that you will be consuming, right? I mean, whether you're buying a packet of biscuits or you're carrying a plastic bottle, we don't know if you're going to lose it, but it's going to be a cleanup cost, right? So those are the kind of initiatives that we need to learn as a hill station, or as a landscape that needs this kind of intervention. Now, I know I'm digressing, Gopi, because I know we agreed to speak. You asked me to speak on something very different, but I think what I'm trying to do here is instigate every civil society, every academic, every institution, every individual who's concerned, whether it's a lawyer or a tree planter. The idea is this: that we don't have a collective vision for this wonderful landscape, and they cannot be a single vision, but I think there can be a shared vision which is 80 or 85% similar for everyone. I don't think we have that either. Am I right? I mean, we all want it to be protected. We don't want waste. We don't want all the human animal conflicts that are happening. All of that is fine. We agree on the uh, broad things, but we don't know what has to be done, who has to do it, and what policy levers have to be activated. So I think unless we don't have a, a single document, 7 or 8 pages, no more, which is agreeable to all parties, it won't make a difference. I mean, if the collectors will come and go, the DFOs will come and go. The guardian minister, I don't know if we have that in Tamil Nadu or not, but surely Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka have that thing about guardian minister, right? So all those kind of things need to be uh, kind of dovetailed into informing the highest level of policy making, to say that this is what every citizen, every institution, every concerned citizen of uh, this wonderful region believes in. And this concerns not just the Tamil Nadu part of Nilgiris, but it has to be aligned with the Karnataka part and the Kerala part, right? I know it's a tall order, and it's going to be a very difficult thing championing this across different civil societies, but that's how it happens. If you look at the minor successes we've had as civil society or people who've been pushing for change, this is how it happens. It starts from the ground up, and we get the buy-in of each organization, each citizen group. I don't think we've got the buy-in. We are all working, even the rewilders. And let me be very categorical here. I was speaking to the four major rewilding groups here. All of them have a different strategy. I mean, they might be right. They might be right for their context. It might be correct from what their scientific reading of the land is, or their strategy is. One of them may achieve greater success than the other, but there is no broader consensus of how they're going to share resources. How are they going to communicate to, say, the DFO? Are they going to be four different voices, or are they going to be a united voice that this is what we believe it should be? Now, this is where I think I would instigate you and provoke you to come up with something, uh, a more united vision for addressing this. And I don't see that. I think I've thrown my curveball before I answered my first question. So now I'm going to keep quiet. I'm going to let others speak.
So thanks, Pranay. I mean, it's a point for 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 the Nilgiris Capes that uh, I mean, need not, our efforts need not end with the Nilgiris Capes conference, but work on, in the interim between two Nilgiris Capes conferences, work on creating some kind of a chart, network, a chart. I mean, you can give it whatever name, but some kind of everybody coming together. I mean, political terms, you would call it common minimum program, kind of, which keeps coalitions together, some kind of a common minimum program. Anuka and Vandana, can you put that summary? This is the sum total of the discussions of last 2 days.
Thanks. Yeah, I think Pranay Lal made a really important point around having a shared vision. And Gopi, you had asked me about, how do you turn this into a digital collective action? And so we all know that tech makes it really easy for us to reach out to large numbers of people very cheaply. The challenge also is that you have to break through the deluge of content that exists, and people's attention spans are so low and they're being diverted among so much content. So how do you break through that, right? And one of the things I've been noticing over the past few days over here is that there's so much great insight and analysis and data coming out of here, but it's kind of in an echo chamber. A lot of times it's people up here preaching to the converted. And if we need to get change, we need the masses involved. And so my background, I've worked a lot with data and communication. So how do you build a message frame that speaks to the audience that you're sending that message to? And different audiences need different message frames to connect with them. I don't know how many people here have heard of the Shalom Schwartz values framework. If not, definitely look it up. It's social science that's been tested across cultures, broadly saying that there are a number of values that drive human behavior, and these are kind of shared. And there are 4 meta buckets, which are self-preservation, self-enhancement, openness to change, and self-transcendence. And there's some linkage with Maslow's theory as well, for those who know that, but Maslow had the criticism around being a hierarchy, and this thing is a bit more circular. The point being that a lot of us in this space, probably our dominant value is self-transcendence, where we think beyond ourselves. We're thinking of the planet, the ecosystem, but we're the minority. The majority of people are in the other 4 buckets, where they're looking out for their basic needs. Or maybe they just about have their basic needs and they're trying to enhance themselves. Or maybe they've reached the point where they have some abundance and they want to enjoy themselves. And we need to frame the messaging in that way to them. I can give you a quick example of something we did. So we do a lot of message testing, and how that works is you think about an issue. So let's say climate change. We've done a lot of work around climate change. Publicly, if you see, like say, jhatka.org, you won't see the mention of the words climate change, but we get people to take action on climate change. And that's because we tested different messages. So we brainstormed around 12 to 15 different messages. So say, the polar bears are dying, or sea levels are going to rise and Mumbai is going to be underwater, things like that. What we found worked the most with people, and how we do this is we send out ads to large samples of people. So I'm talking about sample populations of hundreds of thousands of people. And you see who clicks on the ad, who comes back and signs up to join the movement. And we found what worked the most was talking about emissions and their impact on your health and your children's health. So just very direct, worked with most people. And, I often joke that I've looked at a lot of the data of how people respond to communication. And what I found is the data shows that people don't respond to data. They respond to emotion and emotional messaging. And so that becomes really important to try and figure out how to share that, beyond just like tables and bar graphs, but really evocative messaging. One thing you can perhaps Google is, if you Google Delhi lungs, you'll see all of the top images are this installation we made, where we essentially had a billboard with a giant pair of HEPA filters shaped like lungs on it. And there were exhaust fans that pulled the air in real time. And so you could see the lungs go black in real time. And we used this as a demonstration of air quality. It got super viral. We took it across the country, and then we open sourced the design, and it's been taken across the world. And I remember, this is an anecdote, I was at a conference, and there was a bunch of researchers and scientists talking through all of the data about, the burden of air quality on mortality in India and things like that. And the audience also had a lot of bureaucrats. There was the transport commissioner. And I remember we went and met the transport commissioner later. And what we did is, the installation that we had in Bangalore, these HEPA filters had gone black with the Bangalore air. And we cut them up into little pieces, put them in these little Ziploc pouches, and across it put a yellow tape which said evidence on it. And we took it to the transport commissioner, and he looked at it and he said, "Wow, finally someone shows me real evidence." It was really funny because this was an artistic project. Those lungs are not scientifically how lungs work. You cannot derive any scientific understanding from it. It was just a visual experiment. And this same transport commissioner had sat through 3 days of scientists telling him the real evidence. But him just seeing this little, gimmick got him thinking about it, and that helped us push a lot of the electric bus work in Bangalore, actually getting electric buses on the street. So the point being is that it's really important to think of message framing in a way that it lands with your audience, and you need to be able to communicate to the audience where they are at. And there are so many different stakeholder groups, right? And each of them have different motivations. Like with the administration, perhaps like reframing things through the lens of economy and revenue, right? And so this is something super important, and even language barriers can be transcended by emotional messaging. So that becomes super important to have as part of the messaging strategy. So yeah, I'd be happy to offer my help with the amazing work that you folks at Nilgiris and Keystone and all of the partners are doing to be able to like also do kind of more testing based approach to messaging to be able to reach out to those audiences, because we know that governments and industry are only going to follow the market and the vote bank. And we might be able to like, shout all we want from the little ivory towers that we have, but unless they understand and unless the demand comes from the public, it's going to be very hard to actually move implementation of the kinds of solutions that we all know that we need.
So yeah, I mean that the actionable point here is uh, Avijit can work on messaging, uh, and I think that that's something we could take as give ourselves a timeline and work on some key messaging, then test it, and I mean, so that's the action point. Pranay.
I think two things been asked to cover. One is that how the philanthropy can be unlocked for the NBR, and the second was how the NBR concern becomes the larger concern nationally and also globally, how that voice can be found. I'll try and do justice to both of it. Basing on the experience of how Dasra over the past 25 years been operating, and very humbly saying that we are not a subject matter experts. So a person, a fourth generation urban person sitting on the dais talking about Nilgiri is something I do not intend to be a subject matter expert, but bring in the expertise of a Dasra of how we have managed to kind of, unlock some of these strategic um, ways of, philanthropy getting into the spaces like this. One, we need to understand that when we are talking about restoration, it's going to be a long term. It's not something like we buy books or maybe we fix toilets or we are repairing roof, which is very easy for the CSR to kind of quickly do it and just present it in their annual plan. Um, and for that, we need to understand who is going to be the person of interest for us. And there are two major categories that would emerge as a strategy for us. One, who is invested in the place. So the place-based approach, who find Nilgiri closer to their heart, Nilgiri closer to their work, or something that they're dedicated to. And second, as a theme, restoration or a conservation as a theme that I am interested in. And that is how we'll have to operate it. And there are enough individuals within India. I think one of the example for Dasra is also our Giving Pie network, which has almost 300 to 400 members who are HNIs, UHNIs, family foundations, next gen, new gen, who are part of it. And then we need to work with them how their philanthropy could be more strategic in nature. So like who is interested in Nilgiri beyond 1 year or beyond one event or beyond sponsoring a conference or beyond saying that, I'll just do a plantation and give you trees. Who are these individuals who make it their personal commitment to the region? That is what we need to do. And there are enough individuals that we already know because Dasra being a secretary to a Climate Rise Alliance, we do have some of these givers or the philanthropists who understand the importance of um, long-term giving. We call them as a patient capital, like year one, year two, year three, year four, year five, nothing is going to happen. And later on, you would see, and you need to have that patience. And I think these are the committed individuals we need to go beyond and bring them. I think we call them as a part of donor education because we must understand that it is not something they may understand. They would have something to bring to the table. And I think we need to call them in instead of calling them out. I think that really works for us. Like I said, the theme-based approach also works because Maybe it is not about Nilgiri per se, they understand, but in some other areas, wherever they are, it appeals to them that I need to conserve, or maybe I need to invest in the climate change. And that is how we bring them. And enough individuals across India, I think, would be there to kind of then who could be brought in into the whole Nilgiri as a region. Um, Again, another thing that we need to kind of, as a group, as a collective, that we can do is that make sure there are multiple people coming together and it's not one isolated, one individual kind of contributing. So, a concept of pooled fund or a concept of multiple donors coming together, that also works, and it has worked in the past also. Someone take one aspect of it, which is more appealing to them. Someone says another aspect of it, which could be more easier for them to fit into their strategy. Could be adjacency of what is already working for them. That is what we need to kind of understand. So, making it personal, making it long term, ensuring that they are very much part of it. And we need to chase domestic philanthropy. I would definitely advise that, because it's easier, because it's their land, it's there where they belong to, and emotional giving is always going to be part of Indian culture, I would definitely say. So be it the domestic philanthropy, be it diaspora, it has worked for us. I think we need to appeal to the emotions, and that has actually worked, and it should definitely work with the angle of bringing the science, bringing the strategy, bringing what has worked here. So I think that is how we need to unlock philanthropy, is what I would say. The second part of the conversation you wanted me to focus on was about uh, how this becomes a concern of a nation, or how it becomes a concern of a global voices, is that um, when we are positioning this, we need to understand, of course, it's a tri-juncture. So there's Tamil Nadu, there's Kerala, there's Karnataka, who geographically already involved in it. So when we talk about the narrative plays an important role, like you said, and we need to kind of make sure that the narratives encompasses that, whole three states come together when it talks about the Nilgiri. It cannot be again an isolated voice of Tamil Nadu government trying to do something, or a Karnataka government trying to do something, or a Kerala government trying to do something. It has to be all trijuncture, three states trying to build a narrative, a very strong narrative of not this as a reserve, but as a living biosphere, which the health of which also affects the health of million. I think that narrative need to come out very strongly, and we need to also align with what the national sort of agenda is speaking at the moment, and then how do we plug ourselves into it. Sometimes we not align politically on some of the platforms and the forums. We may have reservations about whether you attend COP or not. Maybe we should go for Asia philanthropy or not. But there are some trade-off we end up doing it. And if you are ready for some of this trade-off, then we see like, how that voice is kind of, plugged into this national forum, because it's one of a case, and it's not only about Nilgiri. What happens here, it could also happen or already happening to multiple places, and how the larger India's climate story and India's climate journey or the change um, is actually evident in what is happening in Nilgiris. So if we position that narrative, I think then a lot more visibility, or the concern, or the care, or attention do get diverted or covered to the Nilgiri, and that is what is with us. Maybe um, local voices need to be accounted for. I think when we talk about the community that are there, whenever we are having any communication strategy, I think we need to account for the local voices, hyperlocal data, because these are the things that get picked up. What is your resilient framework is all about. We talk about resilience, we don't know how it is getting mapped. Maybe when we say the restoration is successful, how are you even doing that? So how do we make this institutional? How do we make sure that the policy is talking to the efforts? This is something that we can pay attention to. I think these are the things that we need to do. And personally, Dasra as a secretariat to Climate Rise Alliance definitely would be taking sort of steps to make sure that we try and unlock more philanthropy, which is speaking about this particular place, bringing more partners, not in terms of only the philanthropies, but in terms of a lot of knowledge which is sitting. I think by knowledge, I do not mean only the scientists, but also the community who've been already kind of having this set of knowledge which could be beneficial for us. And secondly, the networks, like there is India Climate Coalition, which is ICC, then there's Climate Rise Alliance, there's Sholan Network, there's ERA. All of these multiple networks, kind of, if we can bring this together, and definitely Climate Rise Alliance and our secretariat to Dasra as a secretariat to it, we can do that effort to make sure that we bring people to the theme and the place which is concerning to us at today, this hour.
Thank you, Pranay. So, thank you. And and the actionable points you said. What we need is slow gestation philanthropy, and it has to be personal, long term, and preferably chase domestic philanthropy. Yeah. People should get connected to it. The sense of location, sense of theme, and you said climate change, because that's something, and everybody knows that Nilgiri Biosphere Service is at the forefront of climate change. Whatever we didn't agree with what the pathways that's going to take. Same scientists saying two different things, but the point is, whatever the pathway, Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve is at the forefront. So I'll throw this open. Thank you to all the panelists. Rowing Mike.
There's two aspects to it. One is, and I personally believe there's kind of limited things people can do as individuals that can really move the needle, and it needs systemic change. So I'm really about movement building, because it's only as a collective that we can achieve change, right? I mean, I'm sure everyone here has their environmentally friendly practices. You save water, you save electricity, but you need to have that en masse for it to really make a difference. And so it's important to then think through what are the drivers for people to do that, and to talk about what are we pointing them towards. And I think one of the challenges that environmentalists have is we are very much doom and gloom, and it's like, don't do this, don't do that, and people don't know what they should do. And so to what Pranay you had said about creating a vision, I think that's super important. And I think this is a lesson to learn from the right. The right wing does a great job of creating a shared vision of what they can drive people towards, whereas we keep we make it very clear what you shouldn't do, but there's no clear pathway into what we should do that needs to be, and making that linkage back to people of how this benefits you. And I think there's, again, those shared human values of wanting to have like a happy, comfortable life that we can appeal to quite well.
Thank you. I mean, you brought the far right, and suddenly there were these things bouncing in my head. So I must attempt saying some things on this. One of the good things that happened with the ODF scheme, open defecation scheme, that said that Har Ghar toilet or whatever it was. As a person who worked in public health, one of the things that we used to see in late summer, early monsoon, and I used to work in tuberculosis control, including here. In fact, in this hall, I've been here talking to ASHA workers, not in Tamil, but through a translator, whatever. So the thing is, we saw a sudden decline in several high prevalence districts for diarrheal drugs, especially things like ORS or antibiotics that are commonly OTC antibiotics that started to decline. Maybe the attribution is wrong. There's no study, but this could be one reason that many people have now got toilets at home or community toilets that are functioning. At a global scale, two ideas that come to my mind where far right parties have pushed protocols that worked. Montreal, if you notice at the time, even West Germany and many other countries, although democratically elected, had a very far right position, right? But they all signed the Montreal Protocol for very different reasons. Some to protect the industry, some to because they had innovations already in place. So whatever the reasons they were, including strangely, Canada and the US championed it, or the International Whaling Commission, which was partly successful. But if you now look at, say, the Global Plastic Treaty, why it failed is because of the conflicts of interest that exist, and that's because the far right does not want to commit to, losing any business. How is this applicable to the Nilgiris? I think because this is a special jurisdiction, it therefore needs special ideas, a set of new ideas, a set of innovations that will come together. And it's always been the case that Nilgiri has had a young, committed, progressive district collector. I've never seen somebody who's a jaded promotee IAS. I'm sorry, I hope I'm not going to get misquoted or whatever. But the point I'm making here is that you could be able to push a lot in this location, in this district for sure. I can't say this for Wayanad or other part, but surely for Tamil Nadu, this is a very, very important. On economics, I just want to bring again, it's a global example, maybe not applicable to India, but for example, New York pays money to Catskill to keep its farmers and landowners from not using pesticides so that they don't have to treat water, right? We provide water. I mean, Nilgiris Hills provides water not only to Coimbatore, but every other, maybe the rest of Tamil Nadu, right? Could there be a surcharge that we can take from those municipal corporations that we are not going to be using lethal pesticides for our cabbage and our carrots, that argument. And we're going to give you much better, cleaner water. And we're going to have better water management strategies. We're going to make sure that we have, structures in place that ensure that there is, less TDS and whatever, portfolio of things to ensure that there's better water. Can we do something to that effect? Is the question. Right? So I think the other big danger that I see, and coming to climate, and I'm a huge climate skeptic. I mean, some of you were here at the ERA meeting where I was championing the thing that rewilders should start thinking about how they need to look or how they need to leverage what the carbon credit markets are going to offer to them. Right. So if you're going to do soil mitigation, you're going to use enhanced rock weathering, or biochar, or you're going to use wood vaulting, or any new strategy as well. What is it how are you going to sell it? Who are you going to sell it to? And what is the mechanism? Where is the platform? Now, Government of India has a very, very shallow scheme in place. I mean, Government of India, I don't expect them to have something very innovative or something creative. They've come up with something absolutely rubbish in terms of climate change, in the green document. But that doesn't prevent you from accessing the global markets, but only if you take the right path. If you get to the right certifier, the right methodology, the right MRVs, only then. And more importantly, the right science. And currently, including the IPCC, if you look at the AR1, AR2, AR3, they did not mention the landscapes that do the most carbon capture. They were still fixated just with tree planting. And I've spoken about this at length. Tree planting is great, but it's good for short term. The tree is going to die and decompose. It's going to go back into the atmosphere, or it's going to catch fire and go back into the atmosphere. Soil carbon is another major source of carbon release. So are there other ways in which we can look at carbon burial? And nobody's talking about it, including the IPCC. IPCC does not have schemes, and none of the certifiers have schemes on deep carbon burial. Deep in both time perspective as well as burial, which is safe, right? It's not going to get leaked. So the point I'm saying here is that as conservationists and everybody else who's is concerned about whether it's plastic waste, because you're going to get plastic credits also. You're going to get biodiversity credits also once the schemes come into place. There's already a vibrant market, but a perverse market of of carbon credit. Be very, very careful. You might be harming communities and the environment because you followed a certain protocol, and it doesn't work. So this is just a rider, just a thing that I want to flag, that be very careful as you move ahead in terms of adopting strategies, because even today the market is shaky. The Government of India has no interest in what you do with the global markets. About 80% of the data government itself has, or its specialized agencies have this. The thing is, they don't talk to one another, or a state government or a district administration does not have the powers to ask for that data. It's a long channel, right? So even if you want to bring about a change in, say, the working plan here, you'll have to go through Environment Secretary Chennai and bring about special changes, right, on invasives, for example. There are going to be technical questions about, for example, if you are looking at invasives, one of the good strategy would be to look at the MODIS or the Sentinel data. You would get a sense that, which landscapes have lost what kind of vegetation cover, and it's been taken over by what? A little bit of ground truthing, and you get to know that, right? The thing is, how do you get government to recognize its own data? That is the biggest problem just now. I mean, the government of India, for example, pick up any CAG report, and there's so much available on it on which government itself will not act. And of course, now the CAG has no meaning. But even in the days when RTI and CAG and many other things were actionable, it was a long struggle to get the government to begin acting upon something. So I think this would require a multifaceted strategy. And of course, communication is going to be very critical, because you need to build that critical mass. Right now, without embarrassing governments, because earlier we used to embarrass, I mean, as an advocate, we used to embarrass the government, right? You can't do that anymore. So you need to find other ways in which you want things to change. But more important, you need the officers, the bureaucrats, and the mantris and the tantris to first give you the opportunity to listen to you, because they are not interested in listening. All of them, of course, love status quo. So how do you bring about that change, and how do you have break that inertia? Collecting information. I mean, I'm sure you've got enough peer review information. All of us have to have an actionable point. But how do they accept it? And there is no compulsion for them to act upon it. I mean, invasives, for example. I mean, one argument I've heard from one of the governments is, sir, the tree that you're going to replace, taking out Eupatorium and lantana, is also going to go to the same height, same amount of carbon capture, same amount of vegetation. So why do you want to do it? Take this plant out and put new plant. No need. Even that is going to go to the same height, right? The same thing with the Prosopis juliflora. The desert plant is going to be the same height. What is the point? Why do you? There are no localized extinctions of birds or insects and all of that. So why are you worried about it? You're spending money for no reason. How do you counter something like that? You need that education. And it's a massive, massive amount of education that is required, and it's not easy. And I'm sorry, I'm sounding like a pessimist, but it has to start. It will start from many channels, including media. I think that's where and corporate philanthropy. If corporations believe that we need to restore this for this reason, then it will happen slowly. And I think, of course, the pressure from communities, whether it's school children or a certain colony or resident welfare association, if that comes, it translates to votes eventually, or it translates to business investments, whatever. That is something that we need to build as a story.
It's been very interesting. And Madam Tara Gandhi talked about what individual choices can we take. Personally, I think there's certain limitations to individual choices, because individual choices can do certain amount, make certain amount of change. But if you need deeper choices, you need systemic change. But individual choices and collective individual action can push deeper change. And that's where I think now the work for the Nilgiris team, all of us, I think it starts now. I mean, the interim period between Nilgiris 2025 to 26, and that's where we have to have, this process of messaging, developing the messaging. I mean, I was tempted to give Avijit the job of, saying within 5 minutes, can you say what are the messages for NBR? But, yeah, and that's not the way to be done. I mean, it has to be sort of come with, so I think the messaging and then collective action, as you mentioned, I mean, it's a slow process. But see, the point here is, I mean, Pranay made that point. I mean, there is enough data. Ian wanted to say something. You're raising your hand. Okay. No. So I mean, there is enough data, yes, but uh, and it's going to be locked. It's going to be locked. It's going to be. I mean, because they have no interest in. Nobody has an interest in doing it. So how do? And that's where citizen action can sort of push. And that citizen action, a very important point you said, and that should not be missed out. I mean, the voice has to be of not just. I mean, and that makes NBR a complicated case. Of the three states, three different interests, three different political, ideologies, political spectrum, etc. So it's a difficult case, but I think we can start working towards it and the work will start after this to work on these points. I think on that note, is it? I think I would like to stop.